There's also a short story that you wrote. I know that we have a couple of minutes left, but I did want to kind of touch on this. I thought it was incredible. You sent this to me yesterday, and of course we all love Star Wars, you know. This short story or this short description is called "The True Selflessness and the Fall of the Jedi," and it kind of brings in the idea of the Jedi being selfless and how that's a potential handicap, and then of course the selfishness of the Sith, you know, and their idea of uh allowing the emotions to dwell within you and kind of encourage that volatility that allows the Sith to uh use the Force as opposed to the Jedi that kind of look at everything as selflessness, don't have a personal center, and then just kind of, I guess, in a way, allow the force to flow through them and then do, you know, engage in the will of the force rather than the will of the individual Jedi. Could you kind of speak on that as well? I mean, maybe not necessarily having to tie it into pantheism, because I know that this is somewhat of a different topic, but it is the same in regards to looking at the force as being kind of this objective creator that doesn't have its own, I guess, sentience or consciousness within it. Could you kind of talk a little bit about that, please?
Yeah, I think it does tie in because it's about like um, the Force is this amorphous, sort of non-understood, distant, I mean, they wouldn't even call it a deity. It's just sort of a thing that happens. Um, and so you could kind of, if you're prone to see it that way, you could be like, oh, it's the mysterious action of a supreme being. But you could also understand it as this sort of impassive ability that just shows up in some people and not in other people. So I think it has that same flavor as the um, pantheism, where it's like not really described very well, and people just sort of have a notion of it, and they kind of like that. And there's maybe a few aspects that they like, and whatever it is. So in that same way, I think I mean it's interesting because there's intermixing and bleeding between George Lucas's theories and fan theories and whatnot, and how the Star Wars canon has developed. But uh, most people, when they talk about the Force, when they look at the Star Wars mythos, they look at it as, the superpower, essentially. And they have, the light side is the Avengers or the X-Men, the good guys who use it, and then the dark side is the bad guys who use it. And this what's his name? He goes by Sargon of Akkad. I forget his actual name. Um, Carl Benjamin. He did a video on like why, just I think just for fun, but like why the Jedi are actually evil. And there's this really confusing part of what the Jedi talk about the Sith throwing the Force out of balance. And it's like, well, there's like 100 Jedi and one Sith, and now the Force is out of balance. Like, what are you talking? And they kill the one Sith Emperor, and that brings the Force back into balance when there's only Jedi's around. Like, what are you talking about? But I think what makes sense of this and is the best explanation for the larger canon is actually a deeply Christian idea, and I think is a wonderful thing that George Lucas came up with in terms of relating this mythology to us. And it's that it's not that there's a light side and a dark side and that they need to be in balance. It's that what we call the light side, and this is somewhat, I think, something I expand more in the second post. Um, that's part two to that. But the light side is not a side. It's not on one side of the balance scale. It's acting within the realms of morality, of acceptable justice, and then also as much as you can, going beyond and being heroic and virtuous. And the first post is about conceiving of selflessness, and Anakin talks about selflessness, and he describes it as only caring about others. And I sort of take issue with that. And obviously, Anakin's a very flawed character, so it makes sense. But the idea that you are hyper valuing other people and devaluing yourself, I think, is not a heroic, virtuous stance, because then you're just kind of being a masochist. You're like, well, I'll punish me because I'm obviously super bad, but I'll be super, you know, subservient and helpful to even like the worst person in the world. And that's not to say, grade people on their merits and treat them accordingly. It's to say, even if you're the worst person in the world, just like you would serve them, have that value too. So I think just a tweak to selflessness that we need to understand. Um, and so anyhow, the light side is about acting in that beneficent way, because the force itself, even though this is sort of unstated, unspoken officially in the canon, but the force itself is good, is goodness, is the will of goodness. And so when people act within that, they are not unbalancing it. They are doing the force's will. And so it's not unbalanced. The force is naturally balanced, naturally uh, overflowing and generous and just. And people participating in that doesn't in any way cause a problem. The only time a problem in an unbalanced is caused is not just when people do things of their own volition, because you can do things of your own volition that are good. But the problem is when people take their connection to the force and use it for basically use it like we've been talking about, where they view everyone else around them as an NPC and themselves as the main character, and they just do whatever suits them at the expense of other people. So that's unbalancing the force. That's the dark side. And then you can do the inverse of that. It's like, well, when I view myself as the most important person and everybody else is NPCs, that's evil, that's a problem. So therefore, good must be the exact opposite, which is viewing everybody else as of ultimate value and me as of no value. But that first post is me arguing, no, no, that's not it either. That's also a flawed point of view. The true selflessness is not devaluing yourself, but well, it's a little bit of a technical read, but you can read it there. But essentially, no one having a self. You can't value other people and claim that you don't recognize them as selves, because they're out there valued as selves. So you must be seeing selves. It's about seeing everybody as an equal manifestation of a no self, you might say. It takes a little bit of a Buddhist lens there. So anyhow, that is, I think, the better understanding of Star Wars canon, and it is very Christian. It's where the actions of people for the good are not unbalancing. They are part of the sacred action of the Force, which has a good bent to it, a naturally good bent to it. And so that's the light side. The light side is the natural, balanced, full description of the Force. And the dark side is a twisting and abuse of that. Not These are not two opposite ends that need to be equally balanced. One is fine, as you can have as many good people doing good things as you want, but if you have one person exploiting the system and abusing other people, that's out of balance. That's causing a problem.
Right. That's not